you, just to try to do some basic average withdrawals. And I ain't, it's like the harder I try, like you say, you chase the money, run away. And, and part of it for me is like I'm ashamed in a lot of ways because I've been trying for so long and losing for so long that it's like, am I gonna ever, get better?
Right.
And then here you come along with the Hezzy crossover, and I'm like, damn, I ain't never had no damn Hezzy. And I started looking at you, and I'm liking a lot of what I see and hear, but it's like, okay, the minute I get off the phone, watching you and trying to follow you, and I'm on my own, hey, I go back to the old habits real quick.
Yeah, yeah, I understand.
So if I could just find a way to get out of my own way, I think one thing you said that really resonates with me is that if I could just get in the rhythm of winning. Now I don't
Hmm.
know how that's going. I don't know how to do it.
It's one day at a time. It's one day
I,
at a time.
I like it when you say if you can just meet you halfway, but once you get to a certain age, and I'm an older guy than
Hmm.
probably most of your students, but once you get to a certain age, it's like okay, you get locked into that habit. And if it's a good thing, that's good. But if it's not good, then that's the worst thing for you.
Right.
It's
Hmm.
bad habits. So if I could just find a way to turn that around, I don't know how, but apparently you got a knack for what you do. So I'm willing to try to make it work. Now whether it's gonna work, I don't know.
It'll work. It'll
I
work.
mean, as far as me being, when you talk about the four stages of learning, I've heard that before.
Right.
So I know that I'm not unconscious about it. I know I'm doing it all wrong, and most of my challenge is psychological, mental, emotional.
Hmm.
Plus the fact, if you ain't got much money, once you lose a little bit, you out of there.
Right.
So it's like, okay, the least I could do since I ain't got but a little bit to work with is to follow instruction.
Right. Hmm. So, I mean, based off just what you're telling me, it seems like a lot of the things it's like, self-sabotage, right? Let me ask you this. Are you like understanding the concepts of, the Hezzy crossover? I mean, I see some of your, setups that you've dropped in the chat. So I mean, it looks like you know how to mark up, so it's like you from a markup perspective, I feel like you're doing a lot of good things. So my question for you at this point would be, you know, is it over trading? Is it, you make money, then, you blow money, or is it like you just having a hard time winning it all?
Both. It's like, okay, I make money, but I find a way to give it back. And then it's like, after all the smoke is cleared, it feels like, okay, I'm having problems, making any money at all. But
Mhm.
when you say as far as the marking up, I can follow some of like I say, when I thought I was talking to you on the chat, and I was talking to the fake Ray, I was telling him that, hey, I got the basics, I think.
Right.
But that's part of the problem for me because it's like I see you doing, a buy to sell to catch the buy, and basically double dipping,
Hmm.
and that's more advanced. And I be trying to run with that because it's like my patience is like it won't let me wait for the setup, so I'm trying to buy to get down or sell to get to the setup, and so I think I'm trying to do too much, man,
Right. Right. And no, that could
without without really knowing what I'm doing.
no, that could be what it is, honestly. Sometimes you gotta, take it in steps and progressions, right? Like maybe not even don't take any aces, only focus on heavy crossovers that line up with the higher time frame trend, right? Counter trend trading and double dipping, that's more of an advanced technique, right? Where you have to really know where you are. You have to take other things into consideration. And there's certain confirmations that you can compromise with. For example, if I'm double dipping, and I'm taking a heavy crossover that's temporary or short term, that strong high doesn't have to be that strong to me, right? I might compromise a confirmation here and there, because I know it's a temporary trade to begin with. So those are the things that can kind of get you tripped up, right? And the thing is like you want to take this thing in steps, right? So the most basic, strategy that we have right now is just typical hezzy crossover that goes with the overall, higher time frame trend. If you just stick to those, you're gonna have a high win rate, right? Aces typically have a slightly lower win rate than the hezzy crossover. So, I would, maybe just get an account where you only take hezzy crossover setups, where you only trade one pair and you only trade around the same time every day, right? Because if you start strategy hopping and doing different things, that's where the falls can take place. So I would start there for one, and
Okay.
see how that goes.
Now, when you say align the trade up with the overall higher time frame trend, okay. Now I know you want to take your entries on the 1 minute, but what higher time frame are you talking about specifically?
I mean, it could be the 30 minute, 1 hour. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
like 4 hour daily. Like I don't really go that high. But
Okay.
yeah, I would say like 30 minute to 1 hour. See what type of direction you're going to. Like, see if there's an area of liquidity that we pushing towards. I can actually share
Okay.
my screen. That probably help. So this, for example, right?
Uh-huh.
Like the trade we took this morning, was a beautiful, setup on the 30 minute to 1 hour, right? Like
Which is the higher time frame.
right. So
Okay.
you can see this setup really clear on the 1 hour, where it's like, okay, I see got the hezzy crossover, we got a weak low here, and then once we take that weak low, okay, let me, see if I can find, say a hezzy crossover. Now, granted, this one was an ace, right? So it's like, you might miss out on a trade here and there, but that's kind of how I would align it. Make sure that you're trading in a higher time frame directional bias. And then, with the risk to award that we have, you should be, profitable even if you take a few losses here and there. So the goal is to really, make sure you're aligned with the higher time frame. And if you are, then you take advantage of these 1 minute entries, right? And
Okay.
you could take more than one, like every one might not hit the very first time, but like this here, this could be a nice, trade for you, right? Because this was a hezzy crossover setup. And then, it came for these highs here, and maybe that's where you partial out, right? You don't have to get 1 to 20 trades every day, all right? If you just want to get in the rhythm of making money and you just want to get in the rhythm of being able to withdraw, let's just see if you can get from here to the old highs, right? So if you find a strong low right here, then you see a hezzy and a crossover. Let's just take the entry and see if we can make it back to that previous high right there, right? And like let that be your model, right? Some people, like I said, if you're a little more advanced, you can play around with the models, but if you're just trying to really, create that muscle memory, you may just have to stick to one model and then, bring the risk to award down a little bit until you get a little better at your, entries. So, typically I'll take a trade like this, have a real tight stop loss, but maybe just give yourself a little breathing room. Say, okay, I want to get a 1 to 3 risk to reward, right? I'm not focused on getting 1 to 8s right at this moment. You know, give yourself a little breathing room and see if you can consistently hit 1 to 3s like that. And if you can do that consistently, then your timing will get better, right? As your timing gets better, you can play with those stop losses, make them a little tighter. And as your timing and you know, your ability to filter out real trades and traps, as you get better at filtering out, the different setups, then that's when you start anticipating aces, right? Because a lot of times an ace entry is probably just a failed crossover, right? So if you get good at identifying crossovers, hezzy crossovers, by default, you're going to get better at finding ace entries as well, because you're going to see which hezzy crossovers hold and which ones typically fail and turn into an ace. So if you just start with the basics, no buy to sells, no double dipping, just start with your typical hezzy crossover, anywhere from 1 to 3 to 1 to 5 risk to reward. Do that for like your next 30 to 50 trades. As you do that, your eyes are going to get better. As your eyes get better, you'll start to see different things like this, right? Because I didn't give this to y'all this morning, but I seen this. That was a strong high. And right here, this was a hezzy crossover to the downside. That little wick right here, that wick right there is a hezzy on the 15-second chart, right? So I ended up taking this sell here. And then I put my stop loss here, right? And it was happening so fast, I didn't give this one to everybody because we was waiting for the ace. But that just shows you what you can do the better you get at identifying things, right? So I took this trade before I gave this one to y'all. Just because
Wow.
I was able to identify this strong high and this little footprint right there with that wick as a hezzy crossover, right? So you're gonna get better. You just have to keep shooting and start with the basics and then we'll graduate from there.
So from a stop loss perspective, if I'm wrong, then I want to get out. I've heard you say as soon as possible, but does that mean like at the bottom of the wick or the rejection?
Yeah, I put my stop loss above whatever candle made the rejection. So
Okay.
if I get in here, my stop loss is going to be whatever candle is above that rejection. That's where my stop loss is going to go.
So that's usually, is that a hard stop? You got it in the trade, or is that a mental stop?
It's more of a mental stop,
Okay.
but I'm pretty disciplined with my mental stop. The reason I don't put it as a hard stop most of the time is because, it might get super close and, maybe the spread will wick me out or something. So, I just want to see the candle close above my mental stop and then typically I'll get out. But, a lot of times I put a physical stop too. It really just kind of depends how the first couple minutes go. If
Okay.
I get an immediate reaction, I'll go ahead and put my physical stop. But if I'm still waiting for that reaction to take place, I have a mental stop. So if I enter here, I have a mental stop until I get this candle. And then once it proves that it wants to go down, then I'll go ahead and put my stop loss there. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I thank you for that. You've given me a track that I can run on. Just focus on the basics with one particular account, and do that, and with all my craziness, do that in some other account, and
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah. Because
yeah.
that you don't want to gamble and you want to just prove that you know what you're doing enough well enough to consistently make money. So I would just start with the basic Hezi crossover. As you master that, you can start introducing more of the advanced concepts into your strategy. But for now, I would just start off with Hezi crossover because that's really the most, accurate type of setup we can take. That's a setup that, is really it has confirmations to it. Now the ace entry doesn't really have confirmation. It's just more anticipation, right? But the Hezi crossover, it proves that it wants to go
Okay.
the direction already, and it already has the strong low, so it's easier to identify. If you're trying to take aces or you're trying to take buy the sells and sell the buys, it's easy to get tripped up by the wrong thing unless you have a real skilled eye.
Okay, which I apparently don't, well, not apparently, which I definitely do not have. And it goes back to the idea that, you got this and people that's been with you, they got it. And it's like, okay, if I can't get it, then it's like, okay, well, instead of being okay with just learning at whatever rate I'm at, it's like part of me want to rush the process. And when I do that, it's like that's when the self-sabotage kick in at an even faster rate, it seems for me.
Right, right.
So I appreciate you, taking the time out to not only call me, but all the other people that you're helping. So I'm just amazed. It's like I see you, and it seems like you seem to know so much about everything you talk about. And I'm like, wow, it's a blessing, brother. Just like you've had other people express. I'm glad that I can sit in and listen and learn, about different like Drake. I don't know nothing about rap, but I'm learning about that too. And I'm developing an appreciation, because the brothers say, something about battling old age. And I'm like, I'm twice his age. And I'm like, well, it's new for me, but, so I appreciate you on a lot of levels. And when I expressed interest in this call as far as the subject matter, obviously trading, but some of the other stuff that you're into, like with the credit and so, I like to learn as much as I can. But of course, you got to take baby steps. And so right now, you've given me that. So I thank you, brother, for returning the call. Now I've been wrestling in my mind whether or not to say this that I'm gonna say, but I think I'm gonna take a chance. I'm gonna take a shot, and I'm hoping that it doesn't feel like rejection, but I'm gonna put it out there. When you talk about peptides, Ray, I don't know nothing about peptides,
Mhm.
right? But I do know about my experience in my own body. And one of the
Right.
most profound experiences that I've had is when I quit eating meat.
Really.
Somebody gave me well, actually, I met somebody, that was traveling, and they say, I'm gonna try to make this short because I know your time is important. But they say, when I get home, I'm gonna send you this book. And when people say things like that, you have a tendency to disbelieve, dismiss, which is what I did. But
Mhm.
sure enough, the book showed up. And when I got the book and started reading, the name of the book, since you online right now, can you pull it up?
Yeah, sure thing. What's the name of it?
It's tissue cleansing through bowel management.
Okay.
Okay, are you looking at it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, okay. Now this is an old classic book, but one of the things that the guy, Dr. Bernard Jensen, was saying in this book, I was at work working a late shift, working nights, and he said, if you will eliminate animal products from your food choices for 18 months, that you will experience a joy unlike anything you've ever experienced before. And when I read that, it caused me to pause and push away because I'm thinking, well, this is starting to sound like religion. That's the way, you hear church folk talk about joy. And I say, at this point in my life, I've experienced certain things that I felt very, very good about. So he don't know me. So how can he say that?
Hmm.
But then when I thought about it again, I said, well, okay, yeah, he doesn't know me, but what if he's right? What if I do what he's saying and I experience this joy he's talking about? I said, well, if that was my experience, that'd be a good thing. And why would I ever go back? So I'm
Right.
talking to myself. And I said, well, okay, well, I probably wouldn't go back. Right. And then, I had a big bowl of beef stew at work with me that night. But when I read that and I had that conversation with myself, Ray, it was like a switch flipped. And once that happened, it wasn't something I sat down and thought about and deliberated about. It just, I've heard there are times in your life when spirit will move you, whether
Hmm.
you're ready or not. It's like a paradigm shift almost. But anyway, once that happened for me, I didn't eat the beef stew that night. And so I went on for that 18 months. But then I thought about it. It's the way he said it. If he had said a year and a half, immediately I would have said, no, I can't do it. It's
Right.
too long. But because he said 18 months, I said, okay, well, maybe I can do that.
Right. Hmm.
And that wasn't my first experience with the idea, but it just kind of came up again. The very first time somebody showed up in front of me talking like this, I was wondering where she come from because she looked kind of strange in a way, and she was talking even more strange, because she was talking about, you could eat a sandwich with avocado on it, and it would taste as good or even better than the burger, than the meat that you used to. And I'm
Right.
thinking, well, why would she say this? And so she challenged me. She say, go 2 weeks without any meat and see how you feel. And I didn't know the woman, and I'm wondering why she talking to me like that. But anyway, I did that. And so after a couple of weeks, I didn't have much money, but I just happened to be somewhere where I could get a cheap burger. And I did that. And so when I would tell this story to people and they would say, okay, well, what happened when you ate the burger after you hadn't had meat in a while? And I say, okay, well, I ate the burger. And they said, well, it made you sick, right? I said, no, I enjoyed it. It was good. But I still remember that experience. So what I'm saying now is that after probably, it was like, because I know you said you lost a lot of weight in a couple of months.
Right.
But for me, in about 6 weeks, Ray, I had lost about 30, 40 pounds.
Dang.
And at that time, I was working downtown. It was Texas Commerce then, before Chase bought them out. And, so wearing a suit, hey, was something that, you could do at a data center. But
Right.
none of my clothes fit. Everything, when you lose that much weight that fast, people look at you. And it was two things. Either he's on crack, either he's smoking crack, or he's got HIV. One of the two. But when I would hear the conversations, I didn't feel compelled to defend it because I felt like, okay, well, I feel okay. I don't look. And what I found out that when it comes to your body, when you enter right now, I just bought a different little alkaline water system to try to clean up my water,
Right.
but and only got that because I can't afford a hydrogen filter, which I would love to have, but I don't have the money. So that's one of my motives for stuff like that. But what I will say is that uh, uh, one of the things that I'll say this, and I'll try to keep this conversation short, is one of the things that I remember very distinctly is people talking about a natural high and stuff like that. And I never was able to relate to that because back then I was smoking as much weed as I get my hands on. So, but time I had quit. And I remember one day Ray standing at the bus stop. I was like, why am I feeling like this? My vibration was like up there. The
Mhm.
frequency, the energy was up there. And
Yeah.
I'm on the bus stop. I'm on the bus stop. I ain't got no money. And I'm like, well, why do I feel like this? And then I remember thinking, this is that high that folk talk about. And I remember before it was like it wasn't normal, but when that stuff go, my head, it was like a
Right.
clarity that I'd never experienced before. You know, so it's like, it was very profound for me. Now, I did a 3 day water fast. I didn't sign up for it, but the guy, the mentor that was encouraging it, he egged it on, and spirit took over. Because I had just put a frozen pizza in the freezer, so I ain't planning on doing no fast, let alone a 3 day fast, which I never did. But
Right.
he said, what you do is you take three glass gallon containers, and what you do during that 3 day period, you urinate in those glass bottles. And so, as you can imagine, day one was dark and cloudy. Day two, it was a little lighter, but you couldn't see through it. Day three, you could see clean through it. And what
Mhm.
serves as is like a mini body. And so that let me know that, hey, that 3 days of water, I mean, it did things that, there's no way you can. So the only reason why you do that is for what's on the other side. That's the reward. Now, I've not done it since, but it's those habits, that if you can get in place. And so for me, it's like I understand and I know. I say I understand, but the Chinese got an old saying: "He who knows but does not do does not yet know."
Right.
And so when it comes to all the stuff I've learned about trading that I think I know, well, if I'm not making any money, it's like, okay, well, what use is it, if I can't convert, if I can't execute, if I can't, accomplish the goal, so part of my challenge has been, what I've described. But, as far as the peptides, I don't know. I got a buddy of mine that complains about ED, and he's done took every pill he can get his hands on with very minimal results. Now I don't know if peptides is something that can help, because when I talk to the brother about trying to detox or trying to do any of the things that I just mentioned to you, I mean, I
Mhm.
get nowhere. He's not interested in changing
Right.
changing anything. But I tell him, I said, I went to the doctor a few months back, and I was telling him, I said, man, look, when I was talking to the doctor, it seemed like every 4 or 5 questions he would come back. He switch it up a little bit, but it was basically the same question he was asking me: was I having a problem down below? I mean, do you have any issues, with erections, anything? And I kept telling him again and again, no, I don't have any problems. Then finally it clicked for me that the reason why he was asking those questions is that if you got problems down there, that's a good indication that you got other problems,
Right. Mhm.
that are systemic, because your joint is like a barometer. If it's not working right, it's a good chance it might be something wrong with your heart.
Right.
It's a
Mhm.
good chance you got other circulatory issues. And I was
Mhm.
trying to explain that to him, but it's like, okay, he want to benefit, like you talk about, with the trade stuff. He want to benefit. He want, as you said once before, he want to go to heaven, but he don't want to die.
Right.
So it's like he wants the benefit of a healthy body, but he don't want to detox. And I'm trying to tell, man, you got to detox.
Yeah.
I did a parasite cleanse a few months ago, and it was like the hardest thing, Ray, is to take those bitter herbs. It's
Hmm.
hard if you ain't used to that. And the particular cleanse that I was doing, it was like a 4 32-ounce bottles, and you was basically drinking 4 ounces in the morning, 4 ounces in the evening. So that's about 8 ounces a day until you get through the whole thing. And so for 16 days, it's
Mm,
like it was hard, but it's mostly mental and psychological. But the idea is that you got parasites in your body and they get in there all kind of ways. And if you're not doing something like detoxing on a consistent or regular basis, then for many people they get what you call it when you got a whole lot of them, but the doctors won't diagnose that because a lot of times they're not looking for that,
right. They're just looking for
you
the
know.
symptoms.
And so yeah, they just look. Matter of fact, years ago, I was at a Jewish community center over there in Third Ward, and I said, "Well, let me go in here. I ain't never been in. I went in there just kind of nosing around, looking around, and I seen an auditorium, and it was like full of women, and there was a guy down in the front, talking about stuff. And I said, well, let me go in here and sit down. I sat way at the back, just kind of listening in. And this was a doctor, and he was talking about health issues and so I built up the courage to ask from my hand way in the back of the room, Ray. I said, look, I say, in your practice, do you ever see a reason or a need to diagnose parasites in any of your patients? And what he said to me was, no, we don't have that sort of issue. We don't have those problems, in my practice. That's typically what you see in third world countries. Now, when he said that, at that time, I was reading a book about parasites,
Hmm.
and it talked about hookworms, roundworms, pinworms, flatworms, all these different kind of worms that I didn't know nothing about, or have any idea of how they get in the body. But when I read that and I heard him say what he said, I knew there was a disconnect. And all the people that were sitting there listening to him probably, just took it and ran with it, but I knew better. Hey, you can eat stuff and because a lot of the worms, you can't see them. When you feel something on your skin, a lot of times, just because you can't see it, don't mean it ain't something there.
Right.
And and think about the pores of your pores of your skin are like sliding patio doors. In other words, they got easy access in and out of the body. So if you're not doing something on a continuous basis, then chances are for the most part, your stomach acids are going to get rid of us. Your immune system going to do a lot. But I remember, Ray, there was one brother doing a lot what he wasn't doing it like you was doing it, but he was a very good trader. He was a heavy guy, and he was doing a lot of good. And I had just found out about the guy. But when COVID came through, hey, that brother got lost in the sauce, man. They say he went in the hospital and never came out.
Really?
And so when I hear stuff like that, you know, it helps me to understand that there's a lot of people that just don't know. And some people don't want to know. And so by me having this conversation with you, like I said on the call when I did chime in, brother,
Yeah.
you are a national treasure. I mean, you got some people good at it, but they can't teach it. You got some people good at it. They can teach it, but they don't want you to know. Like like you say, the gatekeeper. And if they put it out of reach where you can't get to it no way in terms of a price point, then how many people can it really benefit if you can't afford it?
Right.
So for somebody like you, I said I'm gonna take the chance and drop some of this on the brother. Now, a lot of people ain't trying to change, they ain't trying to give up nothing. But then if you just tell them, okay, well, if you don't want to give up nothing or change it, if you just add this, because you got some stuff out there that's so powerful that if you just add it to what you're already doing, even that'll make a difference. But for
Right.
some people, the reality is that they're just unreachable, man.
Yeah.
One of my mentors said, it's a whole lot of people gonna change, when they throw your ass on that cold hard slab, because at that point it ain't gonna be no more smoking, no more drinking, no more, burning candles at both ends, or all those things that we don't want to change. We're all going to change at that point. So it's
Right.
true. None of us are going to get out of life alive. But the reality is that while you're here, and when I think about you, I mean, you're a humble guy. I mean, to be honest with you, listening to me talk, it may be hard for you to believe, but I was nervous about this call, man. That's why when you first called me on the phone, I was off guard because I'm like, okay, I don't want to do a face to face because I usually don't do that. And I think age is a factor there because most of your communities are young folks,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like, okay, well, I want to know this, I want to learn this skill, but it's like as long as I've been trying, I should be teaching somebody something,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of shame there. You know what I'm saying? But for you, brother, when I look at you and I can see on your Instagram and stuff, I mean, you and your wife out there helping folk, on her birthday by giving the homeless food. I mean, brother, if I'm not willing to put it on the line right here and right now and just take it, because in the book it say don't cast your pearls before swine, you
Right.
know, and I know you very intelligent guy, and I know some of what I'm saying you done heard it before. And
Yeah.
if that's true, then there's probably, the idea that okay, either I don't want to change, and you reject it. But that's a personal choice. But think about it, brother. Like if I see her, I remember seeing a beautiful woman one time at the job on a cigarette break, but during the whole time at the job, she talking about how much she loved her child and how much she loved her. And so there was no question about that. So when I caught her outside with a cigarette, puffing on it, I had to tell her. I said, look, you the best thing that you can give your kid. But
Mm-hmm.
here you out here, you know, oxygen, that's the number one nutrient in the body, and you out here depriving yourself of whatever time you would otherwise have, by this habit. And I know you love your kid because that's all you talk about. So, but Ray, for you and your family, as much as you do for them financially and, showing up for other family members and all that, your health, brother, I'm telling you, man, if you cut, the guy said, if you will eliminate all animal products, anything, dairy, cheese, meat, fish, all of it for 18 months. And when he talk about that joy, it's like, can this be?
Right.
And I've talked to people that have done it for period of time, and they talk about the benefit, and then they went back, and I said, okay, well, if you experienced this benefit, why would you go back?
Right.
And a lot of it has to do with convenience. A lot of it has to do with fitting in. A lot of it has to do with, Napoleon Hill talks about the six basic fears,
Mm-hmm.
and the first three are easy to remember because they closely linked: the fear of ill health, fear of, and that's what people do. They get old, they get sick, they die. So it's easy to remember those three fears, but the other three, the fear of rejection, right? And the fear of a lost love. See, those two, he said, when you put those two with the other three, he said number six outweigh all of them.
Yeah.
Number six is the granddaddy of fear. And he said number six is the fear of poverty. And you got a lot of people like myself leading lives of quiet desperation, scared. Now, my rent is paid this month, but I paid it early because of that fear. But if I hadn't paid it early, I would have gave it to the other guy pretending to be you and lost it. But check this out. I had mentioned to the guy, I thought about a loan. And then I said, but then, they want almost 2 grand for 800 over a 6 month period. And then the guy typed back and he say, over a 6 month period, hey, you could be doing 6 grand. And I didn't respond back. And the reason why I didn't respond back, I was doubling back around trying to see if I could still get that loan. Guess what? I got the loan. But in the time it took for me to go do all that, I reread your warning about the fraud. And that caused me to pump the brakes. Otherwise, I'd have sent it to him. But then it was too late for me to say no to the loan. So once I got the loan and got the money, I'm sad to say, I hate to say, but hey, you got to tell the truth. I put all that money into Genesis and Gates. You know, I think it was like 500 in one account, maybe a couple hundred in another. I done lost all that. Now I'm not happy about that. I'm ashamed about that. But the reality is that I had just enough in there. I mean, one account is at zero, the other one is at a little more than that. So I've been slowly but surely, like I took the trade with you today. It bumped it up a few dollars. So I'm like, if I just do what you're suggesting we do, nothing extra, I'll be all right.
Yeah, for sure.
But the question remains, because you remember the old marshmallow test with the kids, where they leave the kids in the room with the one marshmallow, and they say, if
Right.
you don't eat it, when I get back, I'll give you two. But then when the guy adult leave the room, the cameras are rolling, and them kids be looking at that one marshmallow. And they say the ones that are able to day gratification later on in life, those kids, they did far better as for success. But the ones that ate the one marshmallow straight away, well, those people had, more of a challenge. Like you say, it's easier to spend money, than to invest and save and do all that other stuff because of the instant gratification. So for me, it's like, I'll say this and I'll shut up, because a lot of times on your calls, Ray, I opt to say nothing, because it's like old tongues love to wag. And once you start, it's like, okay, well, you don't want to say more than enough, especially when other people are on the call, because folks don't want to hear all that, you know. But Alexander Elder, and that's another thing, when you start chasing rabbits, you forget, you know. But anyway, man, uh, um, I forget the point I was gonna make, with Alexander Elder. But okay, yeah, he say at one point, he was invited to an AA meeting, with a coworker, for support, and he
Yeah.
went. But he went, not really. His whole heart wasn't in it, but he just went because he was asked. But he said once he got there and started hearing and listening to the 12 steps, he said that sounded like his trading journey. And that, he was having a lot of the same issues that the addicts were having with substance abuse.
Mhm.
And it dawned on him that he had an addiction to losses. So what he did is he applied the 12-step approach to his trading. In other words, the very first thing he said to himself was that he was helpless, in the face of the addiction, that he had to admit that, that he was at rock bottom before he could, you know, come up. And he said it helped him. So like, I might need to try that. And sure enough, I had a coworker that invited me to an AA meeting, and it shocked me, man, because this guy, was the type of guy. He was very smart, but when you would speak to him, he looked at you, and in most cases he wouldn't respond. So when he asked me, I'm like, I was surprised, because I was one of those people that he never really spoke to. But I went, because I had read that information, and once I got there, I'm looking at all this information and listening to it and realizing that this is some profound stuff. Some of the people, the stories that you hear in a group like that, you don't forget.
Mhm.
One guy said he threw up all over the world, in his travels. Another guy said, when he went to his first meeting, he said he was so messed up. He said he didn't even have a belt to tie his pants with. He said he had a rope around his waist, holding up his pants. And
Mhm.
then some of the guests was looking at me and they were saying, "Man, you look good for your first day here," not realizing that that wasn't my issue. Drugs and smoking and alcohol, that wasn't my thing. I had other issues, but it wasn't that. So when I think about reading that information and that experience, it's like, Ray, my rhythm, and I've been more comfortable losing for so long, It's like winning. It's like, okay, well, how can I hurry up and get that back? Which makes no sense. So you've given me more than enough for this call. And I thank you, brother. And now that I've had a chance, thank you for having the patience for listening to some
Oh
of
yeah,
what I've said,
for sure.
especially with the book. The book, Dr. Bernard Jensen, he's renowned. He's renowned. But the idea, like I said, I know it ain't nothing new. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, like just laying off the meat, doing a
You still there?
parasite cleanse. Yeah, for sure. I've heard of it, and it's just, it's just taking the initiative. I
I
understand.
mean, have you?
Say what?
Okay. Well, I know you love your daughter, but Ray, at some point you're gonna have a son. If you had a son, I'd have been talking to you about martial arts, because I mean that experience, that was one of those joys. The idea of strapping on a black belt after seven, it took me. Well, I did it for like 7 years, but it took me probably about 4 or 5 of that at this particular school to get to that point, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Hmm.
And coming through TSU, getting that bachelor's degree, I've not used it, because once I did that, I didn't have a passion to keep going, to go for a master's degree or pursue that. It's like once Kiyosaki came along with the Rich Dad Poor Dad and talking
Yeah.
about financial literacy, I developed a passion for that. But this whole idea of trading, it's like if I could just get good at this one thing, at least I could die a happy man. Because it's like now at this point, Ray, I done learned how to live on nothing. So at this point, it's like as much about developing the skill and feeling like, okay, I understand, I get it. Because when I hear you talk about the hezzy and the crossover and and the strong hand, it's like I mean, it's like Kiyosaki say that the only way he was able to learn the concepts Rich Dad was teaching is that Rich Dad used symbols and figures because that's the only way he could communicate the concepts to a 9-year-old kid. That's what
Right.
you do. Like when I was talking about the miracle worker, Helen Keller, I mean, this true story, this woman was born blind, Ray. She couldn't hear and she couldn't talk. That's blind, deaf, and dumb. And the only way into this woman, this teacher understood because she grew up in homes like that. The only way that she could reach this person was through her feeling nature. And Neville Goddard, with the book "Feeling is the Secret,"
Yeah.
feeling is the secret. You
Hmm.
you you connecting with your subconscious, and that imprints. And so it's like a new trader like myself. I ain't nothing new about me, but the idea is that you talking to somebody who can't see, they can't hear, in many ways be blind, deaf, and dumb. And you trying to teach that person. How do you reach them? By connecting in a way that they get it. When I hear you talking about the hezzy, I'm like, what the hell is a damn? I ain't never heard nothing about no damn hezzy. And then you start talking about the crossover. I'm thinking about Iverson and what's his name? Kyrie, crossing up them boys on the court. I'm like, okay, now my mind has shifted. Okay, this is fun.
Yeah.
So ICT and some of the other people I've looked at with the 1 and 2 hour videos, it's like I get the best sleep I done had. But with you get in and you do something surgical, and little to no, brother, God has gifted you with this. You don't just get this. God has given you this. This is your ministry. So the idea of you getting tripped up like the brother that, his immune system just couldn't deal with AIDS. But you, brother, I'm telling you, man, hey, they doing so much to the food. I asked a brother, I said, how can you win a fight that you don't even know you in? You
Yeah.
can't. And I told the brother, I said, look, I mean, you are under attack on many fronts, spiritually, financially, you know, relationship wise. I mean, the list goes on and on. But one thing I learned about martial arts is that when somebody go to grabbing you, you can survive a punch, a kick. But if somebody go to grabbing you around your neck, whatever you do, you got to do it quick, because now back in the day, if somebody slapped you, you don't slap a man. That's what the pimps used to do to the girl, and that's not to kill them, that's to control them, get them in line, let them know.
Right.
But hey, when somebody go to trying to choke the life out of you, I was telling this young brother this, and I'll say this, and I'll let you go, Ray. 19 years old, coming out from the back, smoking, and I called the brother. I said, "Look," I said, and I stepped right nose to nose, and I asked the brother. I said, "What would you do right now if I slapped the shit out you?" The brother took eyeball me, look. He said, "I fight harder than a bitch." And I said, "Look, man," I say, when I was training back then, one thing I understood is that when it comes to somebody grabbing your neck or anywhere up in that area, the reason why you have to be quick is that, okay, and I challenged, I say, okay, well, if they grabbing you like that, what's going on? And, and he said, he explained what he knew. And I told him, I said, look, you not only have oxygen, but you got blood going to the brain. And if that's interfered with or interrupted, you could suffer irreparable brain damage within a very short period of time. So you got to know that. You got to understand that. And I say, one thing I can say to you now is that when it comes to me choking the shit or slapping the shit out you, because I wasn't a slap. I asked him, I said, what would you do if I started choking the shit out you? And I said, look, I ain't got to do it to you, because you're doing it to yourself. You're doing it to yourself. And so I try to explain to him and like the beautiful girl I saw, in such a way that, okay, they might not like me. They ain't got to be my friend. But as long as they remember, because at some point when they get ready to puff the cigarette, smoke the weed, or whatever it is that they do, at some point when it's time for them to experience that change, spirit gonna move them just like it did me. I used to enjoy smoking weed, but now I've come full circle and I think back, I used to eat the rib and throw the guacamole out the window because it looked like baby shit. I said, no, I ain't eating that. But now I do the reverse. I wouldn't eat the rib, but I'll eat the avocado. I eat the guacamole.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't smoke the weed, but I drink the wheatgrass juice. And Tony Robbins say, hey, if you got a juicer, good. But if you don't, he said, if you got a car, sell your car and buy a juicer. It'll take you further. I remember hearing that many, many years ago. So, Ray, I know you got money to buy a juicer. I know you can just not only get a mediocre, you could get a top line juicer. But if you don't have the will or the discipline or the understanding to see the benefit, because see, the way you go, your family go. When your wife get in the kitchen, either she's helping or she's hurting. The health, the livelihood by what she's feeding the family. And she can only do what she knows. But if you, hey, whatever you do, they're gonna go. When a husband, newlywed, when he make her place is by his side. So you leading your family, you leading, and I'm not just talking about your wife and daughter, but I'm talking about those in your perimeter, your inner circle, folks that's in a position to see whatever changes or even hear about whatever changes you make. That's the kind of influence you got, and it just ripples, brother, when you compound it to include what you're doing from a business standpoint. So I done said more than I ever really planned on saying, Ray, because a lot of this stuff, people ain't, they ain't, one brother, I went to talking to him about Bluebell. We was talking about Bluebell, and he loved him some Bluebell. And I was finna get on my horse and start sharing with him about, the dairy, the fact that, man is the only animal that will suck the milk of another animal beyond a weaning stage. Most animals, once they get weaned, they don't go back to milk. But man, we the only one. Only
Yeah.
mammal walking around that'll eat stuff from all over the world, all any time of the year, out of seasons. Other animals in nature don't do that. For one, they can't. They gotta eat what's in their environment, seasonal. And a lot of times you don't see heart attacks, strokes, and cancer. You don't see that in the animal world,
Right.
but you see it in us for those reasons.
Hmm.
And when you walk into the supermarket, the predominant flavor in the supermarket is sugar. And there's a whole history behind that. But when you look in the natural world, the predominant flavor is bitter. That's
Mm.
why when you do a detox and you taking those bitter herbs, I mean you press and reset. But when you eat the sugar, see it's taking you back. It's taking you everything goes it comes from the ground, it goes back. And sugar it breaks you down. It's like if you've ever had a compost pile, everything goes into the compost pile and it goes back to the soil. That's what
Right.
sugar does. It rushes that process. It's killing us. There's one other thing, while you're online, I'll let you go with this. Pull up on Tubi, Tubi, the free streaming. You got it?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Now type in "They're Trying to Kill Us," the movie.
All right, it's loading up. Give me one second.
You got it?
I'm pulling up to
Okay.
you right now.
So while it's loading up, Ray, the reason why I but while that's loading up, the reason why I mentioned this film is because it taught you got basically your black celebrities. You got John Sally in there. You got Maya. You got a couple other people. But one of the guys made a comment about rap. Some rapper named Dead Prez or somebody. He heard it made a comment on one of his records say in pistols. And he said when he heard that, he had to hear it again because you don't hear that kind of stuff on rap songs.
What did he say?
Deserts. And when it comes to people, he said food kills more people than pistols, more brothers than pistols.
Oh, okay.
Food kills more brothers than pistols. And I remember years ago, a guy said to me, food is a killer. There was a group of folk that would meet and, have like a feast on a holiday or something. But
Hmm.
but it's like once they get you there, then okay, we would have like a detox. And so the idea that the brother was saying is that, hey, he said food is a killer. Now, why that stuck with me, I'm not really sure, but I remember that. Food is a killer. But I think in retrospect, I would say non-food because a lot of what we identify and we choose to reach for as food is really a non-food. It's not fit. But we've been conditioned to think and believe a certain way. So Lay's potato chips, nobody can eat just one. Well, there's a reason why you can't eat just one, right? There's a reason for that.
Hmm.
The IFF, International Fragrance and Flavors, they whole thing. There's a book I was reading to say, the guy was visiting one of these facilities, and they say close your eyes, and they held up something in front of his nose, and he identified, food that it smelled just like, and they said, well, open your eyes. He opened his eyes. It was a strip of paper. They say, with the McDonald's strawberry shake, they got
Right.
all kind of chemicals in there that make it taste like strawberry, but there's, no natural, fruit. And so you have that with a lot of the food substances, on the market. Again, the predominant flavor in the supermarket is sugar. And then when you add on top of that the preservatives, the chemicals, and all the other stuff. I remember being at somebody's place, and they were talking about, the brother came in, the sister was over the stove, and it gets to a point where it's overkill, and I think I'm getting to that point now. So I'm thinking, did you pull the movie up?
Um, I think I have it. I didn't see it on Tubi, but I think I see
Uh-huh.
it on Apple TV. Um, it came out and it's experts and entertainers
You
explore
know,
how
they're trying to kill us.
corruption leads to disproportionate rates of chronic illness amongst
Yeah,
people of color. That sound about right?
that's it.
They got like Neo and
That's it.
okay,
And the thing is that I was talking about the food deserts. Yeah, the food deserts is because a lot of people, especially when it comes to people of color, they're basically, if you can't travel. Just like the other day, I went to Whole Foods, but to get to Whole Foods, I got to get out of Fifth Ward. And since you're from Houston, you're familiar, with some of these neighborhoods. But the reality is, it's not just going to the other neighborhood; it's a consciousness. Because once you got the consciousness, once you understand and once you know, it don't matter where you got to go. But if you don't have the consciousness, then you thinking, okay, well, occasionally I like to go get, Popeyes fries. But I understand that, okay, if I'm eating Popeyes fries, it ain't like they changed the grease when they cook the chicken. I understand that. So the reality is you got a lot of people that just don't know. And then you got a lot of people that don't care to know. But Ray, you got too much. You've been given too much to not know, and now that you've heard it again and again, but you just haven't had the desire to really. But I challenge you to think on the other side of that. What would that be like on the other side of such a ordeal? Because it is going to be an ordeal. When you eliminate some of the stuff that you're putting in, your body immediately will start making changes.
right,
Just like in the book, tissue cleansing through bowel management, the minute spirit leaves the body, Ray, the very minute, the second spirit leaves the body, it starts to decay. You don't see it right away, but soon as the spirit leaves, the flesh, like when you pluck a piece of fruit off a tree, from the time that you pluck it off, that's as good as it gets.
right.
After that, it's down. You've taken it from the life source. So the thing is that when you know, uh, just think about it, a piece of meat. They got to doctor it up. Otherwise, if you saw it like it really was, there's no way you would eat it.
Yeah,
A
I've heard that.
roadkill.
I've heard that.
I like the. I mean, like the Beverly Hillbillies. They make a roadkill. Something like that's that's the way to go. But the thing is that if they didn't put the chemicals in it, if they didn't put the dye in it to keep it, looking like a fresh piece of meat, if they didn't use the perfume to make it smell a certain way, I remember going to the supermarket when I was in Acapulco one time, and the stench was more than I could bear in a supermarket. I'm thinking, how can anybody buy anything out this store to eat? But for them, it was the norm. And even today, when I go through the butcher, like HEB, Central Market, there's a part of the store where if you go through the back, you got to go through the meat part before you get to the other connecting part of the store. And every time I walk through it, the smell for me is undeniable. Dead flesh is dead flesh. But when you introduce that to your body, it's like, first of all, I used to tell people, Ray, you ain't a real tiger. And they look at me crazy. And I'm like, you eating like you got claws and fangs here. A natural meat eater, they got all that to deal with flesh, raw flesh. They got the canines, they can crush the bone, and they got the strong stomach acids that can break down hair and raw flesh. You ain't got none of that. But when you eat in a certain way, the way they condition you to think about it, you acting like you're a carnivore, and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, you have the problems that come along with that. And see, a lot of people, they ain't trying to hear none of what I'm saying. And the truth be told, I probably caught you at an inconvenient time with this, because it's always going to be inconvenient if it's something you don't want to hear or something you don't want to do. But Ray, you got a family, you got a business, you got a whole world of people that, I mean, if they could see and hear some of what you're doing right now, like I say, brother, I don't know, maybe it's kind of good that you kind of, under the radar right now, because you got too big doing some of what you do, you might prove to be a formidable threat for many people for many reasons. One brother told me, he said, hey, if you ever get to be a billionaire, you better not let nobody know. But, he had a business, he was a businessman. I'm sure he had his reasons for saying that. But, I think, hey, God's protection far outweighs, any threat, any fear, So, but some of what I'm saying might stick with you, some of it may not. But I just hope that you receive it knowing that, hey, it's from a position of respect and passion. The same passion you got for the markets and the charts, I'm developing more of the good stuff versus the negative stuff that's causing me to be a loser for so long. I figure, if there's any chance, right now, this monthly 120 that I'm paying or will pay, great. For me, that's going to go right up there with the rent. Because I figure if I can give myself a year, 6 months, a year with this group, ain't no way I'm not doing better at the end of that. And if I'm doing better, why would I ever leave? Like the brother said, he done covered his monthly fee for the whole year. And he just got here. So when people show up like that, it's how would you leave? The only thing is that a lot of people might be a little hesitant to try because they looking at the money. Like you said back when you was charging half that, you better come on before I raise up the price like folks been telling me to do. Well, I didn't make the cut then. But now that I'm here and I can see and experience some of what I'm experiencing, it's like, man, all I got to do, Ray, all I got to do is relax. Just relax. Because I've been giving myself at least a couple of hundred a month to lose and be okay with, because I can still, keep my nose above water, get the rent paid, got food to eat. Anything other than that, hey, if it's a win, good. If it's not, I'll try again. Well, if I just kind of relax, follow you best I can, I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can die a happy man. At least I won't be, broke, disgusted like I've been for so long. Because I got Kiyosaki's board game with a designated spot laid out. I play with myself because most folks don't have the patience to play the game, the board game cash flow. But it's hell getting out the rat race, especially in real life, if you're not willing to be a good student of what you learn. And he say, with the board game, he say the janitor of all the professions, the janitor who makes the least amount of money tends to get out of the rat race quicker because they ain't got the overhead that the attorney, that the police officer, that the lawyer, they all got to pay for, special schools for their kids. They got to pay for high dollar suits, the car, because their image. The janitor ain't got none of that.
Good job, baby.
But anyway, look here, man. I hear your kid talking. I appreciate you listening and taking this in, man. Because whether you act on anything I've said or not, at least I got it out of my system so I don't have to feel like, okay, you scared to even tell the brother what you think. So now that I've done that, thank you for letting me get that out.
No, no, I genuinely appreciate that, just taking the time to even pour into me and see, ways that I can improve, that is much appreciated. And, it's stuff that I've heard. I've been, on a health journey myself, and it's like you hear some people say you need to cut out meat entirely. You hear other people say you need, meat because it got some nutrients and stuff. And it's kind of like, I've kind of, you know, I've kind of compromised and, made excuses for myself to where it's like, let me try to eat more seafood or, let me eat white meat instead of red meat or, whatever, reasons I try to kind of, have what I want and still try to lose weight. But, you're right. It's all about health, man. I've had my share of, health concerns over the years where, I was working really hard and, gained a lot of weight and dealing with aches and pains. Got to take a trip to the doctor here and there because I'm just anxious. And they were, well, sir, there's nothing wrong with your heart. Your chest is fine, your heart is fine. But I'm like, I just don't feel fine, and like I just had to start working out more and, telling myself, I need my protein. So let me, eat some chicken breast, chicken thighs, whatever. And, but ultimately my mission, and I think about it every day, honestly, because, what you're telling me is right on time. Because every morning I wake up, I'm so thankful because I have, I think I do a decent job with my mindset. But one thing that's always a concern to me is, my mortality. And it's like, you see people online, maybe this is the bad part about social media. You see people online where it's like such and such randomly died. And it's like, dang, it was just 32 or something, and then it's like, not to say that that's everybody, but you just see stuff happening here and there. And I'm just like, I was just thinking about it last night. I'm just like, man, what do I have to do to make sure I'm here? I just want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I don't want to be that dad. Like we all knew the people growing up where it's like, yeah, my dad passed and I was in middle school, I was in high school. Like I don't want to be that person, and to a degree, you feel like it's out of your control, but sometimes I guess it's just a lack of awareness and knowledge to the resources that you have available to you. So, you just trying to, sharing stuff with me, books, documentaries, it's much appreciated because me and my wife both want to be healthy. She unfortunately lost a sister that was older than her. Her sister is about 46, I believe. And, health just started failing. But, it's just the typical black family, diet, meat, pork, alcohol. It's like you go to a funeral and then at the repast, everybody eating, nonsense. And it's just like I was even talking to her because I was like, at one point we're gonna have to be the change in our family. You know what I mean? And fortunately for me, my parents are very fit. My dad was about 350 pounds and now he's about 250. And he carries it well. But my parents are pescatarian. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but my parents are pescatarian, and I've watched both of them lose a tremendous amount of weight. My mom was a very big woman, and now my mom is really fit. She's doing burpees and box hops, and same as my dad. My dad is very fit. My dad we works out extremely hard every morning. So, just seeing my parents, and their health improve as they age, where most people their age, they're on blood pressure medication, they're on this, they're on that. And that's actually what made my dad change his diet because he's going to the gym every day. And the doctor said he still has high blood pressure. And it's like, how I got high blood pressure if I don't eat out a window and I work out every day. And that's when he cut out like a lot of the animal fats. That's what he tells me all the time. He's like, look, because I'm telling you, son, lay off that animal fat. that red meat and all of this animal fat. And I'm like, well, I'm eating chicken breast. I'm eating sirloin steak. Sirloin is low fat compared to a ribeye. Like I'm again making these different excuses, but ultimately I want to do whatever is going to have me here long term. And I know I can adjust because I've been cutting sugar out of my diet. I do have Greek yogurt, and it's no sugar added. And I know, you said lay off the dairy. So I gotta do my research on that and, start cutting dairy out of my diet. But one thing I realized is, as I started cutting sugar out of my diet, I realized like your taste buds, they do adapt because I used to be the person to where anything I eat, if it's sugar free, it kind of like tastes bland. It tastes nasty. Like I used to hate the taste of sugar free food, right? Whether it's Diet Coke, whether it's sugar free juice, whether it's whatever it is, I just used to hate the taste of it. But now that, I've made a concerted effort to not eat processed sugar and stuff, I could honestly say, my taste buds have definitely adapted and adjusted to where it's not nearly as difficult as it used to be. So I know if I can make that change here, then surely I could, make the change as it comes down to meat and stuff like that. And like I said, it'll be a bit of a sacrifice, but nothing more is more important than me being here long enough to obtain my goals. Like I said, just being vulnerable with you, that's my biggest fear, man. Is like something happening to me before I accomplish everything I want to accomplish. And I don't want to leave my daughter and my wife here by themselves. Like, bro, like this shit, like it scares me so much. Like, I don't know why. Like, I feel like God got you like he made you tell me this because I swear I think about this all the time. Like it's to the point where I can't even sleep well. And it's like it's not that I feel bad. It's just it's all
Think
over
about
my mind. Ever since I was young, I
think about this, Ray. And this is one of the hey Ray. Think about this. Are you there?
yeah,
Okay. That same fear that you have. Think about this. When an animal is about to die, they're not dumb animals, like we've heard that expression. They're very intelligent. They understand, they know. In some cases, if you can imagine a slaughterhouse, the animal is in line waiting to be slaughtered. And every now and then an animal will try to break rank and make a run and get away before they use the cattle prod to steer them back in line, right? Now, in many ways, I think, as society, they do the same thing to us with the use of fear. But with animals, they can smell that blood. They can see, okay, the animal's up in front of them getting shocked or hit in the head. So they don't want to die. They want to live just like you do. So when fear grips that animal before it dies, see that fear, that adrenaline, it circulates in the body. So when you eat the meat, you eating that fear that the animal had. And so it's no accident that you are affected in many ways that we just don't understand. Not just from a physical standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint as well.
yeah,
So, and when you think about fitness, some of the most fit people, okay, it's not enough. It's good to add that. You need exercise, but it's not enough. Walter Payton, since you're a ball player, sweetness, he was at the top of his game. They say throughout his whole career, he only missed maybe 1, 2 games. So he was as fit as they come, but he died young. Florence Griffin Joyner, FloJo, beautiful sight to see when she ran. Who could argue her level of fitness? But she again died young. fitness wasn't enough. So when you see somebody laying in a casket in their best, your daughter, your wife, if that's what it takes, hey, it's worth it, in my opinion. Because see what's on the other side? What's on the other side of you once you get to that other side? It's so much worth it in terms of what you leave it. So you say it's a sacrifice, what you're giving up, but I challenge you to look at it opposite. Because it's like we live in a world that's upside down. It's almost like in the markets, in many ways, the very thing that they train and condition you to do, like Douglas talks about, it's the worst thing you can do because we've been hardwired to react to fear. We've been hardwired to respond. I should instead of say respond, I should say react to greed. In the bush, they say the way they catch that monkey to get them some monkey meat is that they put a treat in the jug. But the only way you can get your hand in it is when it's open. But when you try to pull your hand out and it's a closed fist because he's grabbing onto that treat, he can't pull it out. And that's how I feel when I'm in a trade. When I done breached my stop loss long ago, but I'm waiting for a pullback that never comes. So I've blown more accounts than I can count. And I think about that monkey that didn't want to let go of that treat because it's in his hands. It's his. He wants it. And he won't let it go. And because he won't let it go, he can't get his hand out. So he's trapped. So the bushman could walk right up on him with a club and hit him in the head. Now he's dead. And you think that, okay, well, I got more sense than a monkey. But the concept is the same. Another image of mine, I remember they had this monkey strapped in the seat, and he was resisting and putting up a fight. He trying to get out, because he know they got him strapped in there. He trapped in, and they don't mean him no good, but they got a little tube right by his mouth, right? And then in the midst of him struggling, they hit him with a drop, not a drink, but with a drop of grape juice. And when he get a taste of that grape juice on his lips, he relax. He chill out. That's what that sugar do to him. And it make me think about Eddie Murphy in the Trading Places, when the Duke brothers get him in the back of the car, and they done bailed him out of jail. He like, what y'all want with me? And he said, well, we the ones bailed you out. And they give him some whiskey and give him some cigars. And he looking around at the limo. And they said, well, if you don't want to be here, we can stop, pull over right now and let you out. But he looking at all them vices. He said, no, I think I can hang out with you fellas for a little while. I think I can hang out with you fellas for a little while. That's that monkey once they hit him with that grape juice. That's me. Once I get a profit and I'm thinking, oh, I like this, but I can't get the consistency part. So it's like, hey man, what they do, there's an organization called PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And I remember back when I used to could order information from them and see what's really going on. Because if you could see what's really going on, there's no way you would think the same about it. The conditions that a lot of that quote unquote food is prepared in. The animals a lot of times don't even get to see daylight. They're not roaming around on no grass. They got them in factories. And the fish, the mercury, the waters are so polluted. It's like, I'm gonna stop right there, man. Just like you can talk when it comes to trading and helping us level up, you can go and you can do it in such a way that it's easy to look at it and think, okay, I can do this too. Because you done broke it down to a level that we can it's like low hanging fruit. We can reach for that. Whereas some of these other people compared to them, it's like, yeah, it worked for them, but I don't think I can do that. Or you try to do it, but every time you bump your head. So just like you can talk about that, I can talk about certain things, but it's like I really think I've overextended and I've done. But when you talk about, I mean, this is like they're trying to kill us. I mean, this is literally people's livelihood. There's a guy, George Malcolmus. He wrote a book, and he was talking about how when you go into the average church, the church is full of people that's got all kind of afflictions, and you got to ask yourself, okay, if these are God people, people full of faith and belief, how do you reconcile the church being full of all these sick people and they broke? How does that happen? But anyway, he talked about in his material. He talked about a colon coffee cleanse, and if you've never had a colonic rate, maybe nobody's talked to you about that. But a series of colonics, that would be a gift. The last time I had a colonic, it's been a long time ago, but I still remember. As I left the place, Ray, now I can't remember what I was thinking about on my way to go get it, but on my way back, it was bliss. And so when you hear people talking about the universe communicates in energy, frequency, and vibrations. And so your body, we are a part of nature. Your body is affected by these by and so when you get the your toxicity